In 1954, the manufacturing of crisps there was a revolution in the manufacturing of crisps. Suddenly, Joe Spud Murphy from Dublin got the idea, and not only the idea, but the how to include flavouring in crisps. Prior to them, crisps came with a packet of salt, allegedly. I wasn't around, that you sprinkled over them. But Spud Murphy, who founded the Tato Crisp Company, came up with the idea of adding flavours. And the first flavour was cheese and onion. And it was the first flavour that was ever added to crisps. What has that got to do with MQTT, and what has it got to do with the ESP32? Well, nothing and quite a lot. MQTT was around for ages, but it wasn't until the invention or the concept of the Internet of Things came up and devices needed a lightweight protocol to stream data and to send data from one place to another with little overhead and little latency. And into that field came MQTT. MQTT was around since the 90s, and it was designed for sending telemetry, essentially down aisle lines, pipelines. There are, of course, other ways to send data in ones and zeros and analog values from machine to machine, and some have advantages over others. One of the most common used one is the REST or RESTful API, which uses HTTP gets and posts to get its data around the place. But for one reason or another, it can be a bit overhead. You have to set up TCP/IP connections, and there is a bit of uh, messing around, for want of a better word, to do with it. So, whereas MQTT has a great way of just doing what it's meant to do. And the idea is the best way to think of it is like a pigeonhole or a set of folders. You post to certain topics, and if you want to listen to those topics, you subscribe to them. So a bit like feeds happened years ago. You just if there's some value that you're interested in having, you subscribe to that topic and you get updates and you get information about that one. But if you're not, the other stuff is ignored. MQTT is the other great advantage of MQTT is it's in the public domain, and so that means the software, the use of it is all royalty free. You can use it in your own applications, and it's very mature at this stage. It really is good at what it does. There are very little limitations to getting it up and running out of the box. And due to the way it's easy configured, it's just finding its way into everything. So we're going to look at today, we're going to program on to the ESP32. We're going to put an MQTT client that's going to upload data eventually to our what's called a broker. So a broker is like a server. But it's the MQTT naming convention of it. Although people are now using the term server more interchangeably with broker. So we'll be looking at that. But to make sure we have, before we do the hard bit of this, we want to get our architecture all set up. Like so many other things, it's going to need, as I said, a server. So we need to go to have a server running on something. Now, the great thing about MQTT is it'll run on nearly anything. It'll run on anything from even an ESP. It'll run on an ESP. But something like a Raspberry Pi, a Linux machine, a Windows platform, and very lightweight program. And as I said earlier, it's free. Not just free for home use or whatever, but it's free. So we're going to start. We're going to have a look at downloading it. I'm going to cover downloading it onto a Windows platform because I have found on the Windows PC that I'm using here that there's a little wrinkle out of the box. So we're going to look at that. The installing on the Linux is very straightforward. But if anybody wants me to go over that in a subsequent video, yeah, no problem, I can do that. Or if anyone wants me to go over installing it on something like a Raspberry Pi or an Alimex board or whatever else, we can do that too. So we're going to look at downloading this stuff. We're going to look at installing it on Windows, getting it up and running as Windows. I'm not going to run it as a service. Now, a service, what does that mean? Well, that means it runs in the background, is always on. You switch on the machine, it gets up and running, and it's there for your use. So if you were doing this in a home installation, you might want to consider that. However, realistically, if you're going to be doing this in a home installation and you want an MQTT device, well, then you're better off not dedicating a PC that has to be on all the time. You're better off using a small little small board that can do that. And I'm just going to pause there. I'm just going to go into my box of tricks and see do I have anything to show you that's like that. So yes, I rescued something from my box of tricks, and this is an Olimex A20 board and very reasonably priced. I think it's under 40, 50 euros. Uh, it runs from an OS which is using, in this case it's Debian. Bullseye. I was Wheezy, I upgraded to Bullseye, and it has hundreds, literally about 140 digital inputs. It's running on an A20 processor. And this runs, you can see I don't have a display on it. This runs MQTT as a broker on it, absolutely no problem. So if you were doing some sort of home installation, you could actually have that sitting there on your Ethernet. Now, the one limitation of it, it doesn't come with a Wi-Fi connection, so you could plug this into your router. So you could put this into your closet or your cupboard or wherever your router, your Wi-Fi router is, and plug it in via an Ethernet connection. Alternatively, you could grab, and I usually have one of these lying around here somewhere. Of course, I can't see it now. You could plug in one of these Wi-Fi USB devices, but I have actually, there's even smaller ones. Oh, there we go. This is called a Wi-Pi, probably for designed for Raspberry Pi. So you could plug that into the USB, and you've got this device then wirelessly. So that's a nice little thing. If anybody's interested, then we can do a video on getting them up and running. Olimex, the site that produces these and some of these ESP32s, they do produce quite inexpensive hardware, but it can be a bit hit and miss getting stuff up and running. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install the Mosquito broker, as it's called, or the Mosquito server on our device. So the website there for it, I've just put in a search for Mosquito. Of course, I'll put these URLs down into the more. Is this one here, Eclipse Mosquito. And yes, that's the same Eclipse as Eclipse, the C or the IDE developer application, which of course the esp-idf is also available for, as well as Visual Studio Code. So you can go into here, you can see, read all about Eclipse and Mosquito, and there's three flavors. There's 3.1, which is the original one, 3.11, and 5. Most of the time, you're going to be using 3.11. So download, it's, oh, sorry, I'm just scrolling on the wrong screen. And you can see, sorry, where is the download? There's the download. And this will bring you to whichever flavor you're having yourself. In this case, it will be the Windows 64 version. So obviously you click on that, and that's going to download. I'm going to start the installer. There it goes. Open, and the installer should pop up there now, and just give it a second. So we've just got the old pop-up window there. It's come up, and next. Now I'm not going to finish the install there because I already have this installed, but I do just want to show you something. If you want to run this as a dedicated service, then of course you can install all these. However, if you plan on actually putting it on something like a Raspberry Pi or an Olimex or some other board, then you don't really need to download it as a service. You just need to download the bare minimum, and it's just handy because then it doesn't mean it's not hanging around your PC when you don't need it. The downside is for testing and that you have to start it, but it doesn't take much to start it. So I would recommend that unless you're going to want this running all the time, 100% of the time on your machine, then just download the files. So unselect the Video Studio Runtime and the service. Just hit next and finish off the install. I'm not going to hit those because I said I have that done already. Now, when you do download it, it's going to want to be installed to a place of your choice. So mine went to my D drive where I keep all this. And hopefully this will be legible on there. But what you get is you get a load of files here, and there is mosquito.conf, which is a configuration file for Mosquito. There's mosquito.exe, and then there's other ones, pub, sub, and all this. The pub and the sub are for testing it, but we're not actually going to use those for testing. We're going to use a different application. we're going to use a very, very handy piece of software. Again, this is free to use, free to download, and it's by this smiley chap here, Thomas Nordquist, and it's called mqtt-explorer. And what this does is it gives you, it's a GUI, it's a visual overview of the MQTT broker. It logs on as a client and it shows you all the topics that you could subscribe to, that you should subscribe to, that you shouldn't, and it lets you make push write stuff to topics and that. And it's a brilliant little explorer to brilliant application. So go ahead and download that. Again, there's different variants. There's Mac, Windows, Ubuntu, and Linux. So whichever one of those you need. I run and I have the Linux one, excuse me, running on my machine, on a machine on the wall there, and I've got Windows one on this one. I find this is an invaluable program, even if you're not doing it with the ESP32, to have this on your system. So go ahead and download that application. So we're going to go back now to the Mosquito install file. So we go to this folder, and what we want to do is we want to run this mosquito.exe. The handiest way to get up a PowerShell or a command terminal application here in Windows is, well, if you can just obviously go down to here, run, but then it'll start up in a random folder. We want it to start in this folder here because this is where we want to run the stuff. So the easiest way to start this in this folder is click on the little folder. This is Windows 11, and type the word either PowerShell or command, whichever you prefer on using. And I'm going to hit PowerShell, and it opens up an instance of a terminal-like application that lets us execute it. But more importantly, you'll notice there, it has actually opened it up in the folder we wanted to. If I go dir, we can see there's all our files in there. And the one we want, the one we're interested in, is mosquito.exe. Now, I just / to start it. Windows isn't case sensitive. Mosquito.exe. And hit enter. And, well, it doesn't look like much is happening there. What's after happening is, yeah, Mosquito has actually started and it's launched and it's running in the background. I'm going to cancel that there just to show you. So what we're going to do is it's going to start off and it's going to start running because we've given it no configuration information. It's going to run as a local host on the local host. In other words, it's going to run on this machine. And so what we can do is we can create, so when you go into, so this is, I've just started up mqtt-explorer. You'll be greeted with this window. There will be, of course, different ones from here. So we want to go a new connection, and we're going to call this one local host. You can call it whatever you want. Switch off valid certificate, switch off encryption, and it will be using MQTT protocol. And the IP address is this machine, the local host machine, which is always 127.0.0.1. It's a special IP address if you're not familiar with that. And that IP address means the machine I'm on now. The port that MQTT uses, well, it can use any port, of course, but it uses two by default, one for secure and one for when you're not using security. So 1883 is the unsecure port. Now, I would recommend going without certificates, going without encryption, using it on 1883 to get things up and running. You really only need to start bumping up the security. And yes, you can have certificate security. If you want to connect to AWS, you'll have to have certs. You'll have to have private key certs, public key certs. You'll have to have device certs, root certs, all that. We can do a video on that. We will do a video on connecting to AWS or Google. Why would you want to do that? Well, you might want to do that if you don't want to build an MQTT broker at home, or if you want to have a device in different places of the world. Maybe you have a house up in the woods or by the beach or somewhere, and you want to be reading back information from there. Well, you're not going to be all on the same LAN, so you're going to need to come back through the cloud. So you may want to start doing security like that. We're going to leave username and password blank, and I'm just going to hit the advanced tab just to show you what's there. These are topics that you can subscribe to by default. This thing here, MQTT client ID. MQTT clients, devices connecting to your broker. It doesn't matter what name, what this ID is, but they must have unique IDs. That's the one thing that this thing really needs. It needs to have a unique ID. This, when you install it, will generate a unique ID. And we will need to create unique IDs when we start putting on our ESPs. But if you want it for some reason or other, change it, well, it's in the advanced tab here. So we go back here. We don't really need that. So username is blank, password's blank. Encryption TLS is off. Validate certificate is off. And it's a local address. If I hit connect now, nothing happens because it goes disconnect from server. It can't connect because we don't have MQTT running. So I'm going to hit abort there, and I'm going to go back. I'm going to launch mqtt-explorer, and now I'm going to try and connect. And straight away I've got a different screen, and now I'm onto the broker. So this is showing the broker information. You might think this means I have 7 clients connected. It says client 7. No, it just means in this topic, and these are all topics, there are 7 different items here, values here. So these are, if you like, the broker ones. So what's this going to do for us? Well, what we want to do is we want to create a topic, and a topic can be anything, and topics can be nested. So let's say we want to create a topic called welcome. So we go welcome, and we can have further topics within that, or we can have them at the same level. So we're going to go, so we're creating a topic called welcome, and other devices can subscribe to that topic. And once I post something or put something in that topic, these other devices will automatically see it. And so I put in hello world, and I'm going to put that as raw. That just means text, as ASCII. And I'm going to hit publish, and you can see now here's a topic called welcome, and it's hello world. And we can have subtopics. We can have welcome today, and we'll put something in there. And what day is today? Today is the 29th of November. 29th of November. And we'll put that in there. So now we can see there's welcome. At the top level it was hello world, and then there's a subtopic here called 29. And that's it. That's as simple as how it gets. The one thing, so you can put in any sort of ASCII or JSON values or XML. We'll be using JSON. JSON tends to be the most used with this. The one thing you can't do is binary files, JPEGs or executables or pictures or all that. It's not designed for that. This is designed for lightweight data. So there's not a whole lot going on over here. I just disconnected again in this. You don't see much. So there is a nice feature here if you want to see what's actually going on with your server, especially if you're having stuff isn't connecting properly. You can do -v, verbose. So it spews out an awful lot of stuff. So it says, hey, I've opened up on, and I'm listening on port 1883. And I just push this up a little bit here. Now when we connect, move this over a little bit here, you'll see there'll be an awful lot more information. So bang, you can see, hey, there's all this stuff has connected. You'll notice our previous topic has gone. Yeah, this is non-retentive, so you need to repost this if you want this to appear back there. So here's welcome, here's our subtopic today, and it's 29th November. And you can see here, if I just minimize that out of here, it says somebody posted to that topic. There's a lot of information going on here. And we haven't really had to do anything. Now, here's where it gets a little bit awkward. The local host is fine if you're wanting to, from this computer, post to the thing, to the MQTT broker. However, we're not going to be posting from just this computer. We're not going to be posting from this computer at all, probably. Well, we might put some information. We're going to be posting from one of these devices. And another one of these devices is going to be subscribing to them, and it's going to be displaying stuff on this one. So we need to make sure that we can actually connect to our broker from not just the local host, but from other IP addresses on our LAN. Now, so you need to know your IP address of the machine you're on. Another reason probably not to run this as a service, because if you are, you're going to end up having to probably set up your device as static and all that, so the IP address doesn't change. So we can see it's starting to get a little bit messy now. So we want to find out our IP address. So if you don't know what your IP address of the machine is, if it's not static, the easiest way is to go into network and hit up network, and this is the one I want. I have two LANs on this machine. One has an internet. Oh, I always do the wrong. That one is the wrong one. I always press the wrong thing there. What I want to do is I want to click in here, and I want to go view additional properties. And my IP address is 192.168.1.31. Now, if I was on a Linux machine, and if I put this into, change my local one here to this, I'll put that in there, 192.168.1.31. Didn't change anything else. This is essentially the same IP address as this machine, and hit connect. My Explorer is still running. On a Linux machine, that would connect now. Now, this is not connecting. And there's two things that we need to do. First of all, we need, on this machine, it should connect because it was connecting when it was a local host. And if this was Linux, it would. Now, from an external device, we'd have to do one further step. But from this device, so this is a problem. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to do the MQTT broker install on a Windows machine. I'm not sure if this is the same on all Windows because I don't normally run the brokers on Windows machines. So I didn't notice this when I was doing it. And the reason is you have to, so I'm going to stop this here. You have to tell MQTT to run, not on the local host, not using the, which should work, but this specific IP address for your machine. So how do you do that? Well, it's not very hard, and we're going to go through that now. So if we look back here to where Mosquito installed, there was this file called mosquito.conf. And if I do the old universal switch for H for help, it'll see specify the broker config file. So we can specify things when MQTT is starting up that maybe, I won't say out of the norm, but just little variants. So that's what we need to do. So we need to start it with the MQTT, with a configuration file. So opening up the configuration file and you get this. And there's an awful lot of stuff. Everything has actually been commented out, but it's great. They put in every conceivable parameter, told you what it is and commented it out. The one that we want to do is the listening. At the moment, the broker is listening on localhost, and it's not listening on the IP address of the machine. As I said, on Linux, this isn't a problem. It'll be fine. So we need to scroll down to a topic called listeners. And there's all big talk there about listeners. And we want to come down to this one where it tells us the listener, gone past it. It actually is listener itself. So this is it. So what we want to do is we want to make sure it's listening on the device. And it says, listener, you have to give the port number. So the default port is 1883. If you want to change what port your MQTT is on, if you want to give an extra little bit of possibly, I won't say security, but for some other reason, maybe you've got two brokers, I don't know. If you need to change it, this is where you change it. So we're telling it, we're still listening on port 1883 and the IP address. Now, it's in square brackets, and square brackets nearly always on these type of config files means it's a default. Sorry, it's not default, it's an optional value. So we want to tell it 192.168.1.31. So listen not on localhost, but listen on your actual IP address of this machine. We could save that there and it should probably work, but there's one other setting I recommend putting in, and this is that you can tell MQTT, hey, only connect if the guy has a password, only connect if the girl has a certain different IP address, only connect if this, only connect if that. And one of these is allow anonymous connections. So we're going to set that to true. So that means if somebody doesn't put in a username and a password, let it connect. There is no issue there. Again, this is only for really on your own LAN, where you're the only person going to be connecting. You certainly wouldn't be doing this if this anonymous. You'd have a minimum of a username and a password. And even that wouldn't be great because the username and password on the non-secure port, the 1883 is sent in clear. So if anyone has Wireshark or is sniffing off, they'll see your username and password. But again, as I said, we will do a later video on AWS for that, how to connect to secure stuff. Down the road. So if I go back to, oh, I must have killed it by accident. If I go back to mqtt-explorer, we'll see this is where the username and password. So we're leaving that blank. So if we leave that blank and we want something to connect with that, we need to say allow anonymous true. So that's all. So I'm just going to save those two settings. So we've put in the IP address of the actual IP address of the machine, and we've put in the allow anonymous. Now there's one other little thing we will need to do. We'll deal with that in a second. So that's allow anonymous true, save it. So now what we need to do is we need to start our MQTT broker with this very config file. And that's easy to do. All we do is, if we go H, it'll say, hey, C, switch C is specify the broker config file. So we're going to do that. So it's mosquito.conf. Again, I can just leave it like that, hit that, and it'll run in the background and it won't be spewing out any stuff. But I want to see it spewing out stuff, at least initially, so that we know it's connecting. So verbose. And I've typed something wrong there. It says unknown option. Oh yeah, because I never put the switch C in there. And there we go. And it's asking me, I haven't run it before, because now I have told it to use not use the local host, use the other one. It wants to know, can it access networks? So yes, allow access. So that's going to create a rule in the firewall for this application, mosquito.exe. And that firewall may or may not be enough to allow clients in. So we'll come back to it if we may have to come back to it in a minute anyway. So that's running there now. Now, when we have a look at, oh, I didn't close down broker the last time. The two of them were up, so I've got two of them running there. So what we're going to do is now we're going to try and connect to this IP address, which is the one we've specified in the config. No username, no password. Everything else is the same, and connect, and we're in. So now we know that the IP address, is connectable via the broker. If anything else, if this device can't connect to it, then it means it's not an issue with the IP address as such, it's an issue with the firewall on Windows. Similarly, there's a firewall on Linux, but it's very easily, you just have to do UFW allow and the port number 1883 and then enable it, and Bob's your uncle. Again, if anyone has any issues with that, give me a shout in the comments and we'll either type in a response or we'll do a video on it. Okay, so that's shown that's connected there. So lovely jubbly, great in the cup, off we go. So hey, what's next? Well, what's next now is the real reason. What we're going to do is going to put a little bit of code on our ESP32 to connect to these brokers. And what we should see is we should be able to either see it, we should see it here as an extra client. So if I drop this client down and it says total is one, so one client, which is this mqtt-explorer itself. So the clients should go up to two. And once, if that happens, we'll know it's on it. So we're going to create an application for that. So how do we do that? Well, let's go and let's start up our Visual Studio Code or Eclipse if you're using Eclipse. And so what we need to do is, so this is a different application here because it always starts with something else. Anyway, it doesn't matter what that is. So what we want to do is we want to start a new application. So the best way to do that is you press F1 to open this command palette up here. And now I'm getting new project show examples because I'm using esp-idf a lot. There might be a reason you mightn't be, so you mightn't see exactly what you want. So what you want to do is you type esp-idf colons and it'll start filtering, and you want new project. Now you could also start there's like show examples projects. I prefer creating an example through the new project way. I find it'll always be successful if you do this. So you want to type this until get enough of the filtering down that you can actually see what you're typing, and you hit new project, and it's going to put up the wizard window, and here it does, and it'll close this other project down for us. So what do we want to call it? We will call it MQTT and first app. I'm going to create it to my default one because I'm going to be deleting it later. And now it's going to ask us here, what boards do we want to connect to? Well, I'm actually going to connect in my board. So I'll see the COM port in a minute. So I'm going to connect with this device. Now, I find these are very hit and miss on whether they connect or not. If you're having problems connecting with it, if it's not seeing the USB port when you connect in, what you'll have to do is you'll have to hold down this switch on the side and the button 0 and boot it a couple of times with them held down. They have an issue. These other boards from the likes of Olimex, SparkFun, and that never have that issue. So there's an issue. I won't say it's an issue with the board. It could be because the S3 chip. Anyway, so we're not using a kit. We're using, in my case, I am using the S3 chip. So you basically can see there is only the original chip. There's the S2, the S3, the C3, C3, and the S3. Now, some of these are via ESP-prog, which is a device you can get to program them, like a JTAG device. And we're going to be using built-in USB. They should work as well. ESP-prog will work, or built-in USB JTAG. So let's, we're going to be going USB. Actually, yeah. I'm thinking, It should work here. Let's try this. I haven't tried this one before, so this should work as well. COM port we're selecting, and my COM port, this device is not seeing my COM port, and this is an issue I have with this chip when it boots up at times. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause this for a second and come right back. Okay, so back there. Now, I'm going to leave this. I can't select this for the moment because it's still not showing up. One of the things I can do is I can quit out of this, or I can just, or I'll just select the proper COM port in a moment. For this project, we're not going to be using any additional components, so leave this blank. So all we've done is we've selected the chip, but you know what? If you get the chip wrong or you decide to use a different chip, it doesn't matter. You can select it. We can reselect all these later through this down the bottom here. So we go choose template. Now, when you hit choose template, it may or may not end up in this one here. It'll either, if it ends up with this one, this is the one we will use template app for going forward for creating brand new basic vanilla projects. But we want to use one of the examples. So we select, instead of extensions, we select esp-idf. Now, yours may have already started with esp-idf, so if it has esp-idf, well then, that's where you are. So this lists all the examples, and there's for every single module that's built into this device, esp-idf provides an example on how to use. And this is very, very handy because you can start here. It's a good start place to go, oh, will this work properly or not? And you can look at that, and then you can go see what they've done. So I'm scrolling down here, not just to show you them all, but there's one called protocols, which I've gone past. So there's one Wi-Fi here. If you want to set up a web browser, and this can get that running as a HTTP browser. Anyway, what we're looking for one called protocols, and here we go. See, look, there's Modbus and everything in here, if you're that way inclined. So what we're going to be looking, there's the secure servers and MQTT. So there's loads of different ones, whether encryption, no encryption, or whatever. So we're going to go with the basic one that has no encryption, the easiest to get up and running, and that's this one, TCP. So we're selecting under protocols, MQTT, TCP. And this will tell you blah, 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 and it'll tell you the file structure, and it'll give you some additional information about it that you can read at your own leisure. But we're just going to go into create a project using this template. And once it does that, it's going to say, hey, do you want to open a new window? And yes, you go, yes, I do. You close that down and you maximize this. And now we're in the project folder. You'll notice, okay, it might ask you for scan for kits. So just hit escape there. You can allow or don't allow this. The make file, of course, not found. Don't worry about that. So now it's saying, hey, I'm on COM port 9. So we want to change that. We open it up. So I know 9 and 10 aren't ESP devices. They're to USB to serial ports. So 7 is where my device is plugged in. So hit 7 and it says, hey, do you want to save that to that app? The next thing across here is the chip. So you can select the chip type that you're from here. If you need to change it, you can select where your folder is. Now this one, the cog, this is very handy. Oh, sorry, there's the one when I clicked for the chip. So it's saying which chip do you want to select. So yeah, an ES3. And it's saying via built-in USB JTAG or ESP-prog. So ESP-prog. Now, all the configuration parameters that are possible for this device are stored in a type of system. I probably won't find it straight away now, called kconfig, and it's a great way of there they are, kconfigs. So this is where all the values are stored, and they're stored in like a JSON file, and then they're built and they're put into this SDK config. But there's a little wizard that you click this cog, and it extracts all those values. The very first time you run it, it can take a small little bit of while to build it for the very first time. And there's a taskbar that goes across the bottom here, and it's after creating it there. Let's close this down out of the way. And there's some settings. So all the settings that we're going to need are going to be in here. So the first one is serial flasher config. So this is specific for our ESP device, and it will depend. And this is the beauty of using esp-idf. It doesn't matter if different companies have made different boards. This will give you access to all the parameters you need. So I know that as we saw it in the previous video, that the LilyGo board needs the SPI flash mode to be QIO. It needs it to be 80 megahertz, and we know from the LilyGo site that it's a 16 meg file. So we changed those settings there. The next thing we have here, if we scroll down, and you can see these, If we scroll down, it moves here on the left. So the next one we want is example configurations. Now these aren't ones off. If you get something wrong, if you type in something wrong or whatever else, you can just go back and redo these. It's what's very handy about this. So this is an example configuration broker URL for our MQTT. So what we need to do is we need to put in, MQTT :/ and our IP address of where the broker is, which is 192.168.1.31. We need to put in your SSID for your Wi-Fi. And remember now, if you've got 2 or 3 Wi-Fi networks in your house, it must be the Wi-Fi network that is on this domain, 192.168.1.31. You may have another one, you know, it might be an extension one, which is on 2.31. So you need to be on the same LAN subnet as your broker. I'm just going to copy and paste in my SSID and my code for that. I shall put in there now in a second. So I pop them in there, and so we've got them in there. What else do we need to do? Well, there's a couple of small other little parameters that we need for this chip, and they are down in ESP32 specific. So if I scroll down to there, I want to change my frequency to 240 megahertz, and that is it. So I hit save. And what that will do now is that will rebuild this stk-config file, which will have all our parameters that's in there. Now you cannot change this directly if you want, because when you do another build, this gets redone. So there's no point in changing that. So I have my parameters in there. You can close that down if you want. Again, if you've typed something wrong, you've typed your SSID wrong or whatever else, you just hit the cog and it'll reopen again and you change them. So we're nearly good to go. So there's our main application. We're not going to change that. What's nice about this kconfig thing is it pulls in the IP address and all this into this application from this setup menu here. We'll see more about that later. Okay, so this is a clean. We haven't built anything, so we don't need to do it. This is a build, so we'd normally hit this next. This one then is select flash method. Let's just select the flash method. Well, we're not JTAG, we're UART. Save that there. And it says now UART beside it. This would be then to flash the device. So what we could do is we could go build. We could select, make sure the flash method is UART. Hit flash. And then we could open up a terminal to see what this device is spewing out. But we're going to have to do all those 3 steps. So we can just hit this flame. And this flame goes build, flash, and monitor. So I'm going to hit that. And that's going to take a while to build for the first build. So I'm just going to pause there and come back when it's built. Okay, so that's just finished compiling. And it's starting to flash now. If you get to this stage and it doesn't start flashing, if it just hangs at the bit here, not showing any errors, but saying, yeah, the size of the memory and all this is, well, what may have happened is that you never selected the UART here. And it's waiting for you with a drop-down menu here to select UART. And once you select UART, now it's happened to me a couple of times. And I forgot to select UART. And I go, why isn't this burning? And it's up to the top here. Now, what's after happening here is everything has gone great, swimmingly good. So we've burned the code in. It's rebooted here. So this is where it's doing its own reboot notification. Remember now, this is all stuff that we're sending to the log. We've seen that in our first app on esp-idf. So I use for info. So it's coming up green. So it's saying all this info on boot and boot and boot and stuff, and it's starting there. It's telling you all about the cores and everything. This is very handy information if something starts going wrong. There's a Wi-Fi one. It's telling you it's the Wi-Fi driver task, it's certifications, all load of stuff about the Wi-Fi. And it's coming along here. It's coming along here, and it is telling you that it is example got IP for. So it's trying to connect. So it's got its IP address. So here is the device's IP address. So this is the ESP32's IP address. So it's saying ESP.NET IP handler example connect. So in the example, the IP address is 192.168.1.16. So that's our ESP32. And there's the net mask and there's the gateway. And it's saying, hey, it's saying example connect, got IP4 connect address, blah. So that's saying there. And it's saying connect to example. Okay. And now it's going to MQTT event connected. So it's after connecting to MQTT, and it's sent publish, and it's subscribed to these different topics. So it's on. It says topic equals topic 0. So it's subscribed to a topic called topic, and it's done that successfully. So if we now open up MQTT broker, and we'll see, hey, there's a new topic that's after arriving here called topic. So in this one, quality of service 1, it's it says data underscore 3, and in quality of service, so actually this is the same topic, it's published at both times, has the word data. We can actually go into the code and change that. Well, what's this QoS? What's this QoS business? I hear you say. QoS 0 is the client says, I don't care if you get this or not. Here's the information. And this would be used, quality of service 0 would be if you're constantly streaming numbers at it. You don't care if this one's missed, because there's going to be another one a couple of milliseconds later. So you use that for QoS when you don't care if one or two of them is missed once there's streaming of data coming along. Quality of service 1 is probably the one you're going to use. This is where the client says, I'm going to keep on pushing the stuff up to the MQTT broker until it at least acknowledges at least one of my posts, and then it'll stop. So it'll keep on. So if it has the value it wants to send, hey, data underscore 4, it'll keep on sending it to the broker until such time as the broker goes, yeah, I got you, relax, stop. It doesn't mean that the broker may receive the same message on noisy connections more than once. So that's the one we'll probably be using all the time. There is a further quality of service too, and that is, I'm going to send it. You're going to have to acknowledge it once, but I'm only going to send it sufficient times until you actually acknowledge it. So it's much slower. So the client will send it up to the broker. It'll wait. Broker didn't acknowledge. So now it'll send it again. The broker acknowledges, say it may be late. And the quality, the other device then won't send it again. So it's only one, maximum of one. So it's much slower. So quality of service 0 is if you're lashing out the data. That's probably the way to go. Quality of service 1, though, is probably going to be more than one we're going to be using. So that's what's in this one. So those topics are there. And if we look at the code, then we will see where those are. And we can mess them around a little bit. So just looking at, this is all, you can see this is ESP log I, and this is tag. Tag is set to MQTT example. So this is tag. So as we saw in the last one, if we change this tag to something else, then that's what it'll say there. That's string here. So it lets you group loads of, if you've got a lot of debug information coming back from maybe different classes or in different methods, and you want to group them by what method is putting back information, then you can change this tag. So, and you can see there's an awful lot of information. So we're looking for this one, and it says data equals data. So let's do a quick, see, can we find that? And there's 13 of them. Let's find where it's data. Yeah, this could be. I'll just pause a second. Okay, so what I did there was I noticed here it's publishing the word data underscore 3 to this topic QoS 1. So I did a search for data underscore 3, and here it is. So here is the thing. So it's saying when you're connected, I want you to publish to the client to this topic data 3. So let's say, and it also then is going to using quality of service 0. It's going to do that. So we will just, it's subscribing, it's publishing, and then it's subscribing, and it's subscribing, and then it's unsubscribing. So I'm just going to, I am going to change this topic to, we'll say, what did we call, we had our other one here. What we'll do is we'll call one, so we'll leave that one as topic, and we'll call this Bill's World, and we're going to go hello world. And what we're going to do is we're going to change this tag name to Phil's. So what this will come up is when it comes these lists here, it'll come out with a different tag on it, so it'll be easier to spot. So that's what we're going to do. So what are these subscribing? Well, subscribing means that the ESP32 will get a notification of when something changes in that topic. So if we subscribe to a topic and we change something in the topic from a different device, this device will spot that and react. And all this overhead is done for us. We're not going to spend too much time on this. We're gonna save that, and we're gonna hit the old build flash burn monitor. Away you go. And as that's doing that there, so we're not going to do much more than this. Just want to show you, this is really more just a device, a very handy thing for testing, that your MQTT broker view you've installed is good, that your mqtt-explorer is good. And in our next our next video, we're going to, whoa, they're blasted out there. So it's now it's going to connect, and there we've connected. So we should see, there we go, there's the one I changed to, and published successfully. So that was when I changed it to Phil's. And so now when we look at the broker, there is our topic, Phil's World. So here was the other topic it created. So that was the topic it created, and here's my one that I've created called Phil's World. If we go into the broker as well here under clients, we'll see there's two clients connected. There's two clients connected because there's this unit, this device itself here, and there is this device. Now, we haven't set it up on this. There is a very, 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 very handy thing in MQTT. And what you can do is when the device connects to the broker, you can publish this very special topic called a will. And the will is essentially the last will and testament for this device. If this device disconnects gracefully, then the broker says bye bye, off you go, and nothing happens. But you can set it up so that if this device suddenly vanishes, like it powers down and unplugs, the broker will notice that this device just fucked off. And what it will do is it'll publish the will. So you can have devices that are connected, and a special topic will come up saying ESP32 in the garden shed has just vanished off the network. So you can actually detect without having to ping devices and say, are they there? The broker will actually take care of all that for you and display that, and you can react to it. As I said, I haven't set it up on that one, but it's very, very powerful feature, and it's there. And we'll have an awful lot looking more into MQTT as we go down the road on it. But for now, I know there's an awful lot of information there. Hopefully you found that useful. If I've glossed over that, or if you want any more info or me to go over anything in detail, then please drop a note in the comments, and we will see you next time. So all the best and good luck in the cup.